Rain had been threatening all morning, the sky the color of old pewter, heavy and low, and pressing down on the city like a fist. I was on my third coffee and my second hour of pretending to read through contracts when the mail slot in my office door rattled and a small stack of envelopes slid through onto the hardwood floor. I did not get up right away. The contracts were not holding my attention, but neither was anything else. That was just how things had been lately, existing in a kind of gray middle space where nothing felt urgent enough to move toward, and nothing hurt badly enough to move away from. My assistant, Pam, usually sorted the mail before it reached me. The fact that it had come through the slot meant she was already gone for lunch. I got up, crossed the room, bent down, and gathered the small pile. Most of it was the usual kind of noise: a courier invoice, a vendor catalog, a newsletter from an industry association I kept meaning to unsubscribe from. And then, at the bottom, something different: a standard white envelope. No return address. My name written on the front in handwriting I did not recognize. Careful, deliberate letters, the kind someone writes when they are trying very hard not to betray anything. Scott Jordan. My address. A stamp in the corner, slightly crooked. I stood there in the middle of my office floor and looked at it for longer than made any sense. Something moved in my chest. Not pain, not quite. More like the memory of pain. A deep tissue bruise that had healed on the surface but still ached when you pressed it. I sat down at my desk, set the other envelopes aside, held this one in both hands and turned it over. The seal was plain, nothing written on the back. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Not a letter, no words at all, in fact. It was a drawing. Done in crayon, the thick, waxy kind, with unsteady lines and colors that bled past their borders the way children's drawings do. Two figures, side by side, one tall, one smaller. Both had round heads and stick limbs and wide crescent smiles. The tall figure had a scribble of dark hair. The small one had none. Just a round, pale head and enormous eyes rendered in blue crayon, careful and enormous, like someone had spent more time on those eyes than anything else. They were holding hands. At the bottom of the page, in pencil, someone else's handwriting, an adult's, helping small fingers trace letters, were two words: Papa. Scott. I set the drawing down on my desk. I sat very still. My coffee went cold. Outside, the rain finally started. The name I had not said aloud in 2 years sat in my throat like a stone. Dustin Stokes. We had been together for 3 years and broken up for 2, and in all that time I had kept myself very disciplined about him. I did not drive past the street where his apartment used to be. I did not look him up. I deleted our photos from my phone in one surgical session the week after he left, and if sometimes I dreamed about him, about his voice, about the specific way he laughed when something caught him off guard. A surprised sound that rose and then cut itself off like he was embarrassed by his own joy. I did not let myself think about the dreams when I woke up. I had been very good at forgetting, and now there was a drawing on my desk with my name at the bottom: Papa, Scott. I picked it up again and looked at it for a long time. The two stick figures, the careful eyes on the small one, the way their hands connected, just 4 lines crossing, but deliberate. Purposeful. Dustin had not wanted children. That was not why we broke up. The reasons were more complicated, more layered the way all endings are. But it was something I remembered clearly because I had wanted them someday. In the unformed way you want things you haven't thought through yet. And he had said, gently but clearly, that he didn't think he did. So the drawing made no sense. Unless. I turned the envelope over again, looked at the handwriting on the front, looked at the stamp, looked at the postmark, smudged, barely legible. I could make out the first 3 letters of a city name, nothing else. I put the drawing in the top drawer of my desk and closed it. Then I opened it again and looked at it. Then I closed it. I picked up my phone. Jordan architecture occupied the top 2 floors of a building I had designed myself, which was either a point of pride or an act of narcissism depending on who you asked. I had built the firm from 3 people working out of a rented room to 37, and I spent most of my waking hours in these offices, and I had always found that grounding, the weight of work, the specific gravity of purpose. Right now, none of that was helping. I called my younger brother Cal because he was the only person in my life who knew the full story of Dustin and me, and because he was constitutionally incapable of pretending a thing wasn't happening. He picked up on the second ring. "What's wrong?" Not a question, just the flat certainty of someone who has answered enough of my calls to know my silences. "I got something in the mail." "What kind of something?" "A drawing, a child's drawing." Silence on his end. Then, from who? "I don't know. There's no return address, but it's signed. There are 2 names at the bottom, Papa and Scott." Another silence, longer this time. When Cal spoke again, his voice had dropped half a register, which was his tell for taking something seriously. "You think it's from Dustin?" "I don't know. I don't know what I think." "What does the drawing look like?" I described it. The 2 figures, the careful eyes, the held hands. Cal was quiet for a moment. "Scott, I know. That's a kid drawing his family." "Cal, I'm just saying what I see. A small figure and a tall figure holding hands, labeled with your name. Someone helped that kid write your name." "I know what it looks like." "So you're calling me because you want someone to tell you it doesn't mean what you think it means." I rubbed the back of my neck. Outside my windows, the rain was coming down hard now, streaking the glass, blurring the city into something impressionistic. "I'm calling you because I don't know what to do." "You find him." "Cal, you find him, Scott. You call, you text, you show up wherever he is. You've been hollow for 2 years. I've watched you be hollow. And now something from his direction just landed on your desk, and you're sitting in your office pretending to think about it instead of doing something. I don't even know if it's from him, so find out." I closed my eyes. Last I knew, he'd moved. "I don't have a number. I deleted." "You work in a city, you have resources, and you have mutual people if you're willing to be humble enough to ask them." He was right. He was annoyingly, completely right. "I'll think about it." Don't think about it. Do it. Thinking is just panic in a suit. I almost laughed. "When did you get wise?" "I've always been wise." "You just never listened." A pause. "Call me when you know something." He hung up. I opened the drawer and looked at the drawing again. Papa, Scott. I picked up my phone and found a number I had not dialed in 2 years. Marco Vidal answered like no time had passed at all, which was typical of Marco. He was one of those people whose personality existed outside of regular chronology, warm, immediate, incapable of holding a grudge or letting awkwardness sit. "Scott Jordan," he said, like it was a weather forecast. "I wondered when you'd surface." "Hey Marco, hey yourself. How long's it been? 2 years, give or take. Feels like a decade." A sound of movement, the scrape of a chair. "You're not calling to catch up." "No," I admitted. "I need to find Dustin. I need a number, an address, anything current." A beat of silence. Not hostile, just careful. Marco had been a friend to both of us, the kind of mutual friend who navigates a breakup without taking sides, and I had always respected him for it. Can I ask why? "I got something in the mail." "Something I need to talk to him about." "Something from him?" "I think so." "I'm not sure. Marco, I'm not going to make things complicated. I'm not reaching out to rehash anything. If there's a child involved." The silence on his end shifted, became different, loaded. "Marco, Scott." His voice was measured now, deliberate. "I'm going to give you his number. But I want you to know that whatever he tells you, you go in gentle. He's been through things." My chest tightened. "What kind of things?" "That's his story to tell, not mine." A pause. "You got something to write with?" "Yes." He gave me the number, a new one, different area code from what I remembered. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me, just be decent." "I'm trying." "I know." He softened slightly. "It's good to hear your voice, Scott, even if it took a crayon picture to make you pick up the phone." I froze. "How do you know about?" But he had already hung up. I stared at the number for a long time before I called it. What I was afraid of, I could not have articulated cleanly. Not that he wouldn't answer, that was simple. What I was afraid of was the moment between the last ring and the first word. That thin seam of time where everything was still theoretical, still reversible. Once I heard his voice, I would have to know things. And knowing things meant feeling them. It was late afternoon when I finally dialed. 3 rings, then a voice, and the strange, terrible familiarity of it hit me like stepping off a curb in the dark, that lurch of unexpected ground. Hello? Cautious. A little hoarse, like he'd been quiet for a while before the phone rang. Dustin. 2 years. His voice was the same and different. Same low register, same slight roughness at the edges. Different in some quality I couldn't name. Something more careful in it, more guarded. Dustin. My own voice came out steadier than I felt. It's Scott. Silence. Long enough that I counted my own heartbeats. 4, 5, 6. Scott. Not a question, not surprise exactly. More like something acknowledged, like a piece of weather he'd been watching approach from far off. You got it. A drawing. In the mail. 2 figures and my name. Another silence. I heard him exhale. Not a sigh, not quite, more like someone releasing pressure that had built past a safe level. I wasn't sure you'd call, he said quietly. Marco gave me your number, he said. I stopped, started again. Dustin, what's going on? Who drew that picture? A pause so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, his name is Leo. Something happened in my chest. Not the bruise memory this time. Something newer and sharper and not entirely painful. He's yours. Yes, a beat. He's 4. He'll be 5 in March. I did the math without meaning to. Without wanting to. March. Nearly 5. 2 years since the breakup. Which meant that when Dustin left, he might already have known, or was about to know, or, were you? I stopped. No. His voice was quiet and firm. I didn't know when I left. I found out about 2 months later. I was going to tell you, and then I didn't. Why? Because we weren't. He stopped, tried again. Because I was scared. Because the way things ended between us, I didn't think you'd want. Another stop. Because I made a choice that I've spent almost 4 years questioning, and I don't have a clean answer for you. I'm sorry, Scott. I know that's not enough. I was standing at my office window by then, looking out at the rain-slicked street below, at the blurred lights of cars moving through the wet evening. The city looked like a watercolor. Everything smeared and soft and uncertain at the edges. Who is he? My voice was barely above a murmur. Tell me about him. The silence this time was different, softer. Dustin started, and something shifted in his voice. The guardedness fell away for just a moment, and something else came through. Something warm and helpless and complete. He's so much. He talks constantly. He makes up songs about everything. About breakfast, about his shoes, about the color of the sky. He draws all the time. He's been asking about you. My throat tightened. He knows about me. He found a photo. Old one, on my laptop, from before I deleted everything. He asked who the man was, and a shaky breath. I told him your name. I said you were someone important. He's been asking questions ever since, and it kept building until he made that drawing. He made it himself and asked me to send it to you. A 4-year-old boy who had found a photograph and asked questions and made a drawing with careful eyes and sent it to a stranger who was, apparently, not entirely a stranger. Dustin. My voice cracked slightly on the second syllable. I need to see him. The silence this time was the longest yet. But it was not a refusing silence. It was a reckoning one. Okay, he said finally. Just that word. Just the one. Where are you? He told me. He was 300 miles away. That was a detail that felt both completely arbitrary and deeply meaningful. Far enough to have been invisible, close enough to reach in a single day. I booked a train because flying felt too fast and driving felt too uncertain, and there was something about the long stretch of countryside passing outside a window that seemed right for what I was about to do. Something that required transition, space between the before and the after. I took the Friday morning train, sat in a window seat, and watched fields scroll past in the thin autumn light and tried to organize my thoughts into something coherent. It didn't work. What I had instead of organized thoughts was a set of images, Dustin's face the last time I'd seen it. Set and pale and determined in the way people look when they have decided to do a hard thing and are making themselves follow through. A white envelope on my office floor, a drawing with careful blue eyes. A boy who made up songs about his shoes and had asked his father about a man in a photograph. Leo. The name had a weight to it already, the way real things do as opposed to hypothetical ones. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass and let the landscape move. He was waiting at the station. Quick pause here. If you want to watch our videos early with 0 ads or get access to exclusive videos, our Patreon has you covered, link in the description. Alright, back to where things get interesting. I saw him before he saw me, and I had a few seconds to absorb the fact of him, Dustin Stokes. Real and present and standing 30 feet away on a train platform with his hands in his jacket pockets and his shoulders slightly raised against the wind. He was thinner than I remembered. There were shadows under his eyes that spoke of the particular kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. His hair was longer. He was wearing a dark coat I didn't recognize and scuffed boots. I did. The same ones, worn down at the heels in the same places. Then he looked up and saw me. We stood there, 40 feet apart, with a current of arriving passengers moving between us like a river around stones. He raised one hand. Just slightly. Not a wave, more like an acknowledgement. Here, I'm here. I walked toward him. Up close, the shadows under his eyes were deeper, and the line of his jaw was sharper, but his eyes were the same, that particular shade of dark brown that went amber in strong light. And right now, with the pale autumn sun coming in sideways through the station roof, they were amber. "Hi," he said. "Hi." We stood 6 feet apart. This was the first time I had looked at him in 2 years, and every word I had prepared on the train dissolved. "You look," he started. "Don't," I said quietly. "Not yet, not the pleasantries." He nodded. Something flickered across his face, relief maybe, like he hadn't wanted to do them either. "He's home with a babysitter," he said. I thought it might be better if we talked first, just us. "Before you meet him, if that's okay?" "Yes," I exhaled. "Yes, that's okay. There's a place near my apartment. Quiet. We can walk." We walked. The place was a coffee shop on a narrow street, the kind with mismatched chairs and too many plants, and the particular acoustics of a room that absorbs sound rather than bouncing it. We sat across from each other at a small table in the corner, and I wrapped both hands around a cup of tea. I didn't particularly want, and waited. Dustin sat with his coffee and looked at the table and then looked at me. "I don't know where to start," he said. "Anywhere. Start anywhere." He was quiet for a moment. "Then, when I left, I want you to know that I meant what I said at the time. I wasn't running from you. I was running from what I couldn't give you. I knew you wanted things I didn't think I could want, and I thought the kindest thing was to get out before I stayed too long, and both of us ended up somewhere we couldn't come back from." I said nothing. Let him keep going. I found out I was pregnant 8 weeks later. "Dustin, the person was gone from your life, and my body was doing something I told you I never wanted, and I sat with that for a long time. I sat with the question of whether to call you. I wrote out what I'd say about 50 times, and every time I got to the part where I imagined your voice on the other end of the line, I couldn't. Why? My voice was even. I was working to keep it even, because I knew what you'd do." He looked up at me, and the amber in his eyes had gone very steady. "You'd come, you'd say all the right things. You'd rebuild something around the fact of a baby even if the original reasons we fell apart hadn't changed. And I was terrified of raising a child in a relationship being held together by obligation. He exhaled, by you being good. You're very good, Scott. You've always been very good. And sometimes that makes it harder to know what's real." I held the cup, breathed. "You didn't trust me to know my own mind." "No." He said it simply, without flinching. "I didn't. And that's on me. That's a thing I own." "And Leo." The name changed his face entirely. The tension in his jaw, the careful set of his shoulders, all of it softened at once into something unguarded and exhausted and profound. Leo is the best thing that has ever happened to me. He is extraordinary. And he is yours too, Scott. Half yours. I know I took that from you, and I am not asking you to forgive that today or tomorrow or possibly ever. I'm asking you to. His voice wavered. He steadied it. I'm asking you to know him. If you want to, he wants to know you. He asked you to send the drawing. He drew 12 before he was satisfied with one. He wanted the eyes to be right. A small, helpless sound, not quite a laugh. He said, "That's how you'd know it was really him, by the eyes." My chest did something complicated and total, like a key turning in a lock that hadn't been opened in a long time. "He sounds like someone I need to meet," I said. Dustin looked at me across the small table, his coffee untouched, his eyes very bright. "Yeah? Yeah. Yeah." The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building with a red door. There were crayon drawings taped to the inside of the stairwell. I noticed them as we climbed, small, colorful squares at a child's eye height, and something about that made my ribs feel tight. Dustin knocked twice before using his key. A signal, I realized, warning the babysitter we were coming. The babysitter was a college-age girl named Priya who gathered her things with cheerful efficiency and said goodnight with the ease of someone who was comfortable here, who was trusted here. She pulled the door shut behind her. And then there was a sound from down the hall, a small thundering, the particular gallop of small feet on hardwood, and a boy came around the corner at a run and stopped dead when he saw me. He was tiny. That was my first thought. The kind of small that children are when you haven't been around children. That always surprises you a little, the scale of them. Dark hair like his father's, though curlier. A round face that was still blurred with babiness at the cheeks. He was wearing pajamas printed with small geometric shapes and one sock, having lost the other somewhere along the way, and his eyes. The drawing had gotten them right. Large, dark, careful. Taking me in with the particular serious attention of a child who has thought a lot about something and is now doing the work of confirming reality against expectation. "You're Scott," he said. "Not a question. I'm Scott," I confirmed. My voice was very quiet. "Papa showed me your picture." He tilted his head slightly. "You looked different in it. When was the picture taken?" "I don't know. Old time." A pause. "Why are you here?" Behind me, I felt Dustin go still, holding his breath. "Because I got your drawing," I said. "The one you sent me." Leo's expression shifted. Became something a little less guarded and a little more itself. "I made 12. The first ones were bad. The one you sent was very good. I worked on the eyes the most." He looked at me critically. "Your eyes are gray. I didn't have gray crayons, so I used blue. Was that okay?" My throat ached. "That was perfect." He considered me for another long moment. Then he turned to Dustin. "Papa, can Scott have dinner with us?" Dustin made a sound that was caught somewhere between relief and emotion and laughed once, unsteadily. "Yes," he said, "if Scott wants to." Leo looked back at me expectantly. "I would love to have dinner," I said. Leo nodded once, decisively, and turned and ran back down the hall. "I'll get the other fork," he called. I stood in the doorway of Dustin's apartment and let out a long, slow breath. "He keeps extra forks," Dustin said from just behind my shoulder. His voice was soft. "For people he likes." He decided that was the polite thing to do. I turned. Dustin was very close and his eyes were glassy and he was doing his best to look like they weren't. "He's extraordinary," I said. Dustin pressed his lips together and nodded and looked away. "You did that," I said. "You made someone extraordinary." He didn't answer. Just moved past me into the apartment, clearing his throat, reaching up to swipe at one eye with the back of his hand as he walked. I let him have that. Then I followed him inside. Dinner was pasta. Leo helped set the table with the extra fork he'd retrieved from a drawer, placing it with great deliberation to the right of my plate. He explained to me that the fork should go on the left, usually. But he had it on the right because he had read a book where the fork was on the right, and he thought that was interesting, and he was keeping it as an option. Both are valid, I said seriously. He gave me a look of deep approval. We ate, and Leo talked. He talked about a bird he'd seen from his window that morning that had a red chest and a mean face. He talked about a disagreement he was having with his friend at nursery school over whether dragons breathed fire or breathed some other thing that he had not determined yet but was researching. He talked about a song he was writing about the sound rain makes on different surfaces and listed 6 surfaces he had already tested. What surfaces? I asked. Window, roof, leaf, puddle, paper, tent. He ticked them off on his fingers. What does tent sound like? Like someone is in a hurry, he said immediately. Then, thoughtfully, or like applause, for the tent. I looked across the table at Dustin, who was watching his son with a small private smile. He glanced at me and caught me looking. For a moment, neither of us looked away. After dinner, Leo consented to be put to bed only on the condition that I heard one of his songs. He sat on the edge of his bed in his geometric pajamas and sang a brief, completely atonal song about a cloud that could not remember where it left its rain. It had 2 verses and a chorus, and the chorus was just the word "oh" repeated 6 times at different volumes. When he was done, he looked at me expectantly. "That's a real song," I told him, honestly, meaning it. He nodded. "I know, I have 43. Will you write them down someday?" "Papa is writing them down for me. He has a notebook." He lay back against his pillow with the boneless ease of a child who has decided sleep is now acceptable. "You can come hear them again," he said, addressing the ceiling. "If you want." "I want," I said. He turned his head and looked at me once more with those careful dark eyes. "Okay," he said, and closed them. Dustin made tea while I stood in the living room and looked at things. The apartment was small and lived in and full of Leo. Drawings on the wall, a basket of toys in the corner, small shoes by the door in a row. But there were signs of Dustin too, the things I recognized. A particular kind of lamp he'd always liked. The careful way books were organized, not by author or title, but by some system only he understood. A throw blanket folded over the arm of the couch in a color between green and gray that I remembered from before. He came back with 2 mugs and handed me one, and we sat on opposite ends of the couch. The apartment was very quiet with Leo asleep. "You look tired," I said. "I am tired," he said simply, without making it into anything more than the truth. Raising someone by yourself is a lot. It's worth every second, and it is also a lot. How have you been managing? Priya is 3 afternoons a week, and Leo's at nursery school mornings. My mother helped for the first year. He wrapped both hands around his mug. "It's been okay. We've built a good life here." "Marco," I said. "You've kept in touch with Marco." "He checks in. He never tells me anything about you." A pause. "I didn't ask him not to. He just didn't. He didn't tell me anything about you either. Until I called him, and even then." I paused. He knew about the drawing. Dustin blinked. "I only told one person I was sending it." A beat. "Of course. He knows everything." He told me to go in gentle. Dustin looked down at his mug. "That was kind of him. Were you going to tell me? Eventually? If Leo hadn't taken matters into his own hands?" A long pause. His thumb moved in small circles around the rim of the mug. "I've been thinking about it for a year, seriously thinking, leaning toward yes." He looked up. And then Leo found that photograph, and I thought he was making the decision easier. He has a way of doing that, making things less complicated by being very straightforward about what he needs. He needed a father. He has a father. He has me. His voice was steady and clear, but he wanted to know about you, and he deserves to know about you. And I. He stopped. "And you?" I said quietly. He set his mug down on the coffee table, sat with his hands in his lap and looked at them. "I've never stopped." He started and stopped again. "I've missed you for 4 years, Scott. Not just since the breakup. I missed you before it, while we were together, in all the ways that were already going wrong. And I missed you after in ways I couldn't let myself think about, because thinking about them meant thinking about everything I'd kept from you." The lamp cast soft light. Outside the window, the city made its low, constant sound. Down the hall somewhere, Leo was dreaming about clouds and rain and songs. "I'm not here to punish you," I said. "If that's what you're bracing for." "I know." He finally looked up. "But you should be angry. You have every right to be." "I was angry," I admitted, "on the train, about what you decided without me. About 4 years." I paused. "But I'm sitting in your apartment, and I've had dinner with my son and heard one of his songs, and I can't sustain the anger right now. I'll probably need to feel it more later. But right now I searched for the word. Grateful. That you sent the drawing. That he asked you to." Dustin's breath caught slightly. "Scott, I have a lot to say to you," I said. "And I think we have a lot to figure out. But none of it needs to happen tonight." "What does need to happen tonight?" I thought about it. "Can I stay on the couch? Just. Not to be 300 miles away from him yet." Something moved across his face, a complicated thing I could not fully read, sorrow and relief, and something softer underneath both of them. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, you can stay." He got up and brought me a blanket from the hall closet. It was the green-gray one from the couch arm, and when he handed it to me, he held it for just a moment, like he was deciding something, and then he let go. "Good night, Scott," he said. "Good night." He went down the hall. I lay down on the couch and pulled the blanket up and stared at the ceiling of his living room and listened to the city and the quiet and Leo's small breathing from down the hall. I did not sleep for a long time. And when I did not dream about anything, just a deep, dark, restful nothing, the kind that comes when something unsettled finally finds ground. Leo found me at 6 in the morning. I heard him before I saw him. The careful pad of one-sock feet on hardwood, the pause at the edge of the room while he decided whether to announce himself. Then a small voice, "Scott, you're still here." "I'm still here," I confirmed, pulling myself up to sitting. He came across the room and climbed up onto the couch beside me with the unself-consciousness of a child who has decided you are safe, folding himself next to me and pulling part of the blanket over his lap. "I had a dream about a river," he said conversationally. "It was made of sound instead of water." "What kind of sound?" he thought. "Low sounds, like the inside of a shell. You know that thing? When you put a shell to your ear?" "The ocean sound. Yes, the river was made of that." He looked at me. "Did you sleep?" "Eventually." "I sleep very well," he said. "Papa says I sleep like a stone that has decided it is done moving." I smiled. "That's a good way to sleep." "Are you going to be my dad?" he asked. Direct and simple, the way 4-year-olds ask everything without the protective layers that accumulate later. The smile faded into something more careful. "I'd very much like to be part of your life," I said. "Your dad, Papa, and I have a lot to talk about and figure out. But yes, I'd like to be here." He seemed to weigh this. "You live far." "I do now. That might change." He looked at me with those enormous, careful eyes. "I drew you 12 times, he said. "The other 11 were bad. I threw them away. I wanted to get the eyes right because Papa said your eyes are the kind that see things other people miss." My throat closed. Dustin said that. 2 years gone, living a life 300 miles away, and he had told his son that. "He told you that?" I said, very carefully. "When I asked about you, he said lots of things." Leo pulled absently at a thread on the blanket. "He said you're the kind of person who notices. He said you noticed things about him that no one else ever did. He said that was special." I sat with that in my chest and let it sit. Down the hall, I heard Dustin's door open. He appeared in the doorway of the living room in bare feet and rumpled clothes, his hair disordered from sleep, and stopped when he saw us. Leo nested against my side under the blanket. Both of us turned toward him. His expression was impossible to describe. It was the kind of expression that doesn't belong to any single emotion. It was a whole landscape of them, moving across his face at once, and I watched them move and didn't look away. "Morning," I said. "Morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. He looked at Leo. "You went and found him." "He was right there," Leo said, as though this were obvious. Dustin came into the room, sat down in the chair across from the couch, looked at the two of us. "Coffee?" he offered. Please. He got up and went to the kitchen, and I heard the sounds of the morning beginning. The rush of water, the click and hum of a machine, the small domestic soundtrack of a life. Leo slid off the couch and padded into the kitchen after him, and I heard the two of them talk in low morning voices, Leo asking something, Dustin answering. And I sat in the living room in the early quiet and felt something shift in my chest, like tectonic plates, not breaking apart this time, but moving into new alignment. After breakfast, eggs that Leo arranged on his plate into what he called a face that was thinking about something important. Priya came for the afternoon, and Leo went with her to the park without fuss, pausing at the door to look back at me with the careful eyes. Will you be here when I come back? He asked. I looked at Dustin, who was watching the exchange from the kitchen doorway. Yes, I said. Leo considered this, then nodded once, the same decisive nod as the night before, and followed Priya out. The apartment was quiet with him gone. A different quiet from the night quiet, less restful, more charged. We sat at the kitchen table. Dustin had made more coffee, and he was turning his mug in slow circles, and I was sitting with my hands flat on the table, and we were both looking slightly to the side of each other in the way people do when there is something large between them. I need to say more than I said last night, he began. I know, I'm sorry, not just the facts of it. He looked up. I need to tell you why, the real why. Not the thing I said last night about obligation and your goodness, which is true, but isn't all of it. I waited. When we were together, he said slowly, I was afraid of how much I needed you. That sounds like a thing people say, I know. But I mean something specific by it. I needed you in a way that scared me. When you were in a room, I could feel the edges of myself differently, sharper, more real. And I thought that kind of needing was a warning sign. I thought it meant something was wrong with how I was built. He stopped, looked down at his mug. So when things started getting complicated, when I could feel us starting to pull in different directions and the friction building, I thought, this is it. This is what it looks like when need turns into disaster. And I left before we could find out. He exhaled. I thought I was being brave. I was being a coward dressed up as brave. Outside the window, the city moved with Saturday morning ease. People on their way to markets, to parks, to the ordinary kind of Saturday. And Leo, I said quietly, Leo is the great correction of my life. His voice was rough. He taught me that the things you need most are the things you don't run from. He needed me completely. And I couldn't run from that, and it turned out I didn't want to, and I was better for it than I had ever been in my life. He looked up at me, and when he found that photograph and asked about you, when he kept asking, every day, in his matter-of-fact way, I thought, I've been wrong about you. I was wrong about what I needed, and wrong about what we were, and wrong about what you deserved. The word sat in my chest, wrong. I'm not here to tell you that everything that happened between us was wrong, I said carefully. Some of what you said last night is true. We were pulling in different directions. There was friction. I don't know if we would have made it through without the ending we had. I know, but you should have told me. About him. Whatever else, you should have told me. Yes. No hesitation, no qualification. Yes, I should have. The silence that followed was not an empty one. It was full of everything we had just put on the table, 4 years of it. The shape of what might have been, what was instead. What was here now in the form of a small boy who drew careful eyes and made up songs. What do we do, he said, not hopeless, just honest. We figure it out, I said. One thing at a time. First thing is Leo, making sure he has what he needs from me, that I'm consistently there, that he can count on me, that it's real and not a visit that happens once and then stops. He nodded. Second thing is, I paused. I need to be honest with you, Dustin. I'm not here to rebuild something on nostalgia. I don't know yet what we are to each other now. I know what we were. But we've both changed and we have a child between us, and that changes the shape of everything. I know, he said quietly. I'm not asking you for anything. Not that, I'm not asking you to. I'm not finished, I said. He stopped. I'm not here on nostalgia, I said. But I also know that I haven't looked at anyone the way I look at you in 4 years. And I know that last night when I was lying on your couch in the dark, I felt something I haven't felt in a long time, which is that I was where I was supposed to be. I kept my voice even, not making it more than what it was. I'm not saying that means we go back to what we were. I'm saying that I'm not going to pretend it doesn't exist. I'd rather be honest with you about it and figure out what to do with it than put it away and have it come up sideways later. He was very still across the table. Okay, he said finally. Okay. Yeah. That's more honest than I deserve. Probably, I said, but I'm not great at pretending. He almost smiled. The shadow of one, at least. No, you never were. Over the next 3 months, I drove up on weekends. That was the framework we agreed on, simple and practical and not trying to be anything it wasn't yet. Leo needed consistency and presence, and I provided that. Dustin needed space to trust me slowly, and I provided that too. And I needed to learn how to be someone's father, which turned out to be a thing that cannot be studied or prepared for, only practiced, only lived. Leo was a patient teacher. He taught me about his songs, all 43 of them, in sessions that lasted exactly as long as his attention allowed before he pivoted to something else. Sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes an hour. He taught me about his opinions on color, which were elaborate and specific. Blue was reliable, yellow was trying too hard, green was the most honest color because it looked different in different lights and didn't pretend otherwise. He taught me about the correct way to build a pillow fort, which involved structural considerations he had developed through trial and error, and which I found genuinely sophisticated. He called me Scott for 3 months. Then one afternoon in December, building a fort in the living room, he looked at me across a pillow he was positioning and said, "Can I call you Dad?" Just like that, matter of fact as everything else. I had to look away for a moment. Toward the window. The winter light was thin and clear and I focused on it and breathed. "Yes," I said, "I would really like that." He nodded, placed the pillow. "Okay, Dad, hold that corner." I held the corner. Dustin and I moved around each other during those weekends with the care of people who are holding something fragile. We talked about Leo, his development, his nursery school, his sleep patterns, his songs. We talked about practical things, schedules, logistics, what the next months might look like. We were very good at practical things. We were less good at the other things, the ones that lived just below the surface of every conversation we had. There were moments. Standing together at the kitchen counter, reaching for the same cabinet at the same time, and stopping a breath apart. Evenings when Leo had gone to bed, and we sat on the couch, and something would shift in the quality of the room's silence, and neither of us quite knew what to do with it. I did not push. He was learning to trust me again, or perhaps learning to trust himself. And I understood that was a thing that moved at its own pace. But in January, the third weekend of the new year, he said something. It was late. Leo was asleep. We had been watching something on television that neither of us was actually watching, and the room had gone quiet, and Dustin had his legs curled up on his side of the couch, and I was on mine. And he said, without looking at me, "Are you seeing anyone?" I looked at him. He was still looking at the television. "No," I said, "I haven't been, since," he stopped, "for a long time. I kept thinking I should. Priya keeps suggesting people." He paused. I kept not being able to want to. "Why are you telling me this?" He finally looked at me. "Because I need you to know, I'm not. I'm not holding you at arm's length because I don't care. I'm holding you at arm's length because I'm terrified that I'll do to you what I did before. That when it gets hard, I'll make the wrong choice again." "You won't," I said. "You can't know that. You're right that I can't guarantee it, but I can know what I've watched you do for 3 months. I've watched you build a life for your son out of nothing. I've watched you wake up at 6 in the morning and be entirely present for an eccentric 4-year-old who has opinions about color. I've watched you be patient and consistent and honest with me, even when honesty is hard." I paused. "You're not the person who made that choice 4 years ago. You've become someone different since then, so have I. He looked at me for a long moment. In the lamplight, his eyes had gone that amber shade. I love you, he said, simple, undramatic, like a statement of geography. This is where we are. The sentence landed in my chest like something returning. Like a voice that has been an echo for so long, you have stopped expecting the original. I know, I said. He looked startled, then almost amused. That's not. I love you too, I said. I never stopped. I just spent 2 years getting very good at putting it in a drawer. He was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, he said, quietly and completely. For all of it. For leaving. For the years. I know, I said again. We can keep apologizing to each other, or we can figure out how to go forward. I'd rather go forward. He looked at the space between us on the couch. Then he crossed it. Just that. Closed the distance, and sat close enough that his shoulder was against mine, and we stayed there without touching more than that. Both of us looking at the television, where something was still playing, neither of us watching it. Okay, he said, very quietly. Okay, I said. February. I started looking at spaces in his city. It was not a dramatic decision, not announced with any fanfare. I simply found myself, during a week that I was home in my own apartment, searching listings in his city during my lunch break. Then asking around about firms, about collaborators. Then calling a former colleague who had relocated there 2 years before, and having a long conversation about the landscape of work in that city, the opportunities, what was missing. Then calling Cal. You're moving, Cal said before I had said anything. I'm considering. You're moving. How soon? Several months, probably. I need to. Do you need me to tell you it's the right thing, or are you calling because you've already decided and you want company while you announce it to yourself? A long pause. The second one, I admitted. Go, Cal said. Obviously, go. I told Dustin in March. Leo's 5th birthday month as it turned out. Leo, who was now definitively calling me Dad and had incorporated me into his songs, which now sometimes featured a tall man with gray eyes who sees the things other people forget to look at. We were in the kitchen after bedtime, and I told Dustin I was planning to relocate. I laid it out practically. The timeline, what I was considering doing with the firm, the spaces I had started looking at. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. You don't have to do that, he said. I want to, I said. And Leo wants me here, and I can build something there. The practical things work out. Scott. He stopped. I don't want you to move here because of obligation. I looked at him steadily. That's a funny concern coming from you. He blinked. You told me once that you were afraid I'd rebuild something around a baby out of obligation, because I was good and I'd do the right thing. I kept my voice level. And I told you some months ago that I needed to be honest. So I'll be honest now. The reason I'm considering moving is not obligation. It's not even primarily Leo. It's that I want to be here. I want to have dinner in this kitchen and hear his songs and sit on your couch and build something with the two of you. I've wanted that since the first night I slept on that couch and felt like I was where I was supposed to be. A pause. Leo is the reason I came back, but you're the reason I want to stay. Dustin had gone very still. I'm not asking anything right now, I said. I'm just telling you the truth. You can do whatever you like with it. He looked at the counter, then at me, then past me, toward the hallway where Leo slept. His birthday is the 15th, he said. He wants a cake shaped like a dragon. He's very specific about the dragon. A pause. He wants you there. I'll be there, I said. He nodded slowly. I want you there too. Another pause. Not just for Leo. Something settled in my chest. I know, I said. The 15th of March came with clear, pale sun. The kind that says, winter is thinking about leaving. And Leo turned 5 with the full weight of his personality intact. Opinionated, cheerful, precise about the dragon cake, which Dustin had commissioned from a bakery 2 weeks in advance based on Leo's illustrated specifications. The dragon was green. Most honest color, Leo explained to the small crowd of nursery school friends and their parents. I wanted an honest cake. I stood in Dustin's kitchen and watched my son explain the philosophical foundations of his cake selection to 4-year-olds who were largely interested in the frosting, and I thought, this is mine. This specific, extraordinary, impossible person is mine. Later, after the guests had gone, and Leo was flushed with sugar and birthday pride, and had received 17 drawings and 6 small toys as gifts, he climbed into my lap on the couch and said, "Dad, are you going to live here someday?" Dustin was in the kitchen. I could hear the sounds of dishes. "I'm working on it," I said. Leo nodded. He was examining one of his gifts, a small stone painted with a face. "I want you to live here," he said simply, the way he said everything. "Papa does too, he just takes longer to say it." From the kitchen, the sound of dishes continued, and then went quiet for a moment, the particular quiet of someone who has stopped what they were doing to listen. "He does he?" I said quietly. "He talks about you when he thinks I'm asleep." Leo turned the stone over. "He says your name sometimes, and then he sighs. The sighing is sad and happy at the same time." "How do you know the difference?" He considered this seriously. It sounds like a question he already knows the answer to, but hasn't said yet. I held my son on the couch on his 5th birthday and thought about the kind of perception that lives in people before they learn to guard it. "Okay," I said. "Okay what?" he said. "Okay, I'll live here someday soon, if Papa agrees." Leo slid off my lap, walked to the kitchen doorway. "Papa," he said. A pause. "Yeah, buddy. Scott says he'll live here soon. You have to say yes." A longer pause. Then Dustin appeared in the doorway. He was leaning against the frame with a dish towel over one shoulder, and his eyes were suspiciously bright, and he was looking at me with an expression I recognized from years ago, before the weight of all the hard decisions had settled onto it. "Did you brief your 4-year-old to do that?" I asked. "He's 5 now," Dustin said. "And no, he operates independently. He's very effective." "He gets it from you," Dustin said. Then, softly, "Yes, Scott, you can live here." Leo looked between us with calm satisfaction. "Good," he said, and went back to examine his birthday gifts. 8 months after I moved, we were unpacking the last of my things when I found it. The original drawing, the one from the envelope. I had kept it in a frame since the week after I received it, and it had survived the move in a box marked fragile between a lamp and a stack of books. I held it in both hands in the new living room of the apartment we now shared, which was larger than Dustin's old one, with high windows that let in long light in the afternoons, and Leo's drawings already covering a section of one wall at exactly his eye height. Dustin came and stood beside me, looked at the drawing over my shoulder. "He made 12, he said. He told me. He wanted the eyes right. He spent 2 days on it." A pause. A pause. "He kept asking me what color your eyes were, and I said gray, and he couldn't find gray, so he used blue, and then he looked at it for a long time and said, 'That's actually better.'" I looked at the careful blue eyes of the small figure in the drawing, the crescent smile, the held hand. "It is better," I said. Dustin's hand found mine. His fingers laced with mine in the way they had learned again, slowly and carefully over months, until it was just ordinary. Just what hands did when they were near each other. "I'm sorry it took a child's drawing," he said. "Don't be. He knew what he was doing. He's 5. He can't possibly have." "He is the most intentional person I've ever met," I said. "He drew 12 versions. He thought about the eyes. He asked you to send it. He does not do things without thinking them through." I paused. "He is, in that way, very much like you." Dustin was quiet for a moment. "And in his eyes," he said finally, "he's like you." I looked at the drawing. The 2 figures, the held hands, the name at the bottom. "Papa, Scott, we should hang it," I said. "Where?" I looked around the room. The high windows. The light. Leo's section of wall already thick with his art. "Next to his," I said, "so he can see it." We hung it that afternoon, next to a drawing Leo had made the week before, a river of sound, he explained, winding through a landscape of things that made noise. A train and a kettle, and a child singing, and 2 figures standing close, their colors bleeding together at the edges where they touched. We stood back and looked at both of them on the wall. Leo came home from school and dropped his bag at the door and ran to look, the way he always ran at things. He stood there, small and certain, in front of the original drawing, the one he had made before he knew me, when I was still a photograph and a name. "You kept it," he said. "Always," I said. He looked at it for a long moment with his careful eyes. "The eyes are good," he decided, "even in blue." Then he turned and went to find his notebook, because he had thought of a new song on the walk home and it was urgent. Dustin looked at me across the room. I looked at him. Outside the windows, the afternoon light came in long and warm and golden, laying itself across the floor, in slanted bars, catching the dust motes drifting in the air above all the ordinary, impossible, necessary things that make up a life. I crossed the room to him. His hand came up to my face the way it always had. Careful, deliberate, like he was confirming something. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," I said, and that was enough. That was, in fact, everything. He had 43 songs, and then he had 44. The 44th came on a Sunday in November, which was a quiet, gray month, the kind that smells like wood smoke and wet pavement and makes everything feel smaller and warmer than it is. Leo was at the kitchen table with his notebook open and a pencil in his hand, and his tongue was sticking out slightly to one side, the tell for deep concentration, and Dustin was reading on the couch. And I was making something that would loosely qualify as a soup. "Dad," Leo said. "Yeah, what does love sound like?" The spoon in my hand moved in slow circles. Dustin had looked up from his book. "What do you mean?" I said. "It sounds like something," Leo said, with the certainty of a person who knows there is an answer and is simply waiting for it to be confirmed. "It has a sound. I need to know what it is for my song." I thought about it. Genuinely. "What have you got so far?" He read from his notebook, "Love sounds like," and then there's a blank. He looked up. "I need to fill it in." Dustin set his book down. I thought about what love sounded like. The specific sound of it, not the abstract, not the category, but the actual acoustic texture. Leo's voice explaining the philosophical foundations of a birthday cake. Dustin saying "okay" across a kitchen table. The train, 300 miles, autumn light through glass. A drawing found in an envelope on a hardwood floor. "Like something being found," I said. "Like when you've been looking for something in another room and you finally hear it, the sound it makes when you pick it up." Leo stared at me for a moment. Then he wrote something down. "That's good," he said. "That works." He went back to his notebook. Dustin was looking at me from the couch with an expression I had learned to read, the one that meant he was feeling something large and had decided to let it be large instead of managing it down to a safer size. I went back to the soup. Outside the window, the gray November moved. A few dry leaves came off a tree. Somewhere down the street, something, a door, a shutter, something ordinary, made a small, ordinary sound. It sounded, if I had to name it, like something being found. In the top drawer of my desk in the new office, the one I built with a partner I trusted and two other people who believed in something we were making together, there is a small wooden box. Inside the box is the original drawing. I have a copy framed on the wall of Leo's room. The original I keep in the drawer because it belongs to me in a way that the copy, however good, does not. Sometimes, on slow afternoons, or on the particular kind of day when things feel heavy for no reason I can name, I open the drawer and take it out. Two stick figures, held hands, colors that bled past their borders. Papa, Scott, a boy who drew 12 versions until he got the eyes right. On the back, which I never noticed until months after I received it, there is a small mark, a fingerprint in blue crayon, round and small and completely accidental. The kind of trace you leave on things without meaning to. The kind that proves someone real was there, pressing down, making something. I put it back in the box, close the drawer, and go home. If you made it to the end, you're my kind of person. Leave a subscribe, comment down your favorite part of the story, and if you want early access to videos, exclusive content, or just want to support the channel, hit that join button right below the video. Even one member genuinely means the world to me. See you in the next one.